Hi everyone, Alex here. Just a heads up, in the second half of this episode, we chat about some pretty heavy mental health themes, including suicide. We've put a few links to mental health services in the show notes.
World turned upside down.
In this episode, the boys talk to Justin. He's a stand-up comic, but he also runs a charity called The Next Step Australia. They help men with their mental health and do all sorts of training. Oh, and there's a few bad words. Sorry. Dad, what's a street bomb? Be sure to stick around though. Something really special happens at the end.
Mate, that is unbelievable. I'm very rarely at a loss for words. Just unbelievably generous.
My friend had a baby. Now he don't sleep no more. Waves crash in his eyes. Tides on the nursery floor. Oh, my friend had a baby.
Yeah, how many kids do you have, Justin? Sorry?
2. Yep, 9 and 3. Big gap.
Oh, wow.
That is a pretty big gap, yeah. Was that planned or just happened that way?
Neither of them were planned, brother. The first one, we'd only been together for like 6 or 7 months. And then I was like, you should stop taking your birth control because I reckon that's why you're a lunatic. And turns out just a lunatic in general. And I may have been indulging in quite a fair bit of marijuana around that time, and I really bought into the myths that that would make your sperm slow down. I was like, look, you've been on birth control forever. I smoke way too much weed. Surely we're just going to be fine. Within like 3 weeks or something, we were pregnant. It was so fast. There was no delay whatsoever. And then the second time around, we were like very heavily tracking, like following the Psycho app, and then went away for our anniversary, didn't check properly, and then bang, just one time, and then we had our second one. So
that's when it happens.
Apparently, I've got the best swimmers of all time. That's what I'm finding out through these 2 moments.
Oh, well, I think you and Scott might have to have a sperm off because
it's weird. He's propositioned that to me many times over the years, and I didn't know what it was, but now I'm finding out.
Like, come into this wardrobe. I've got an idea. That's like one of the highlights of my life is having the obstetrician and the midwife that were doing my sperm count at the time going, what the fuck did you do between the last wank and this wank? And why is there so many? So, yeah, real life highlight for me.
Yeah, well, maybe I've never maybe I've just got to go do that just to make myself feel good.
For that feel good privilege, it is horrifically expensive. So it'll be the most golden wank you've ever had in your life.
And now, funnily enough, I completely forgot we had this tonight, to be honest. It's been a crazy week, but I actually booked in a vasectomy yesterday. I've booked it in for January, but I have, and then coming on a parenting podcast, quite again, pun intended. So it's all just meant to be at the moment.
And very good point about as well, when you're not trying is often when it happens.
Yeah.
With our first, my wife and I were on holiday over we were in Amsterdam at the time, and apparently that's when it worked. So yeah, when you're relaxing is usually a good indicator that it's going to work. Maybe.
Were you smoking a lot of weed over there at the time? Maybe that was
I was
secret sauce.
No, for the record, I was way too paranoid to be paranoid overseas. So I was like, I'm just not going to do that while I'm over here. So Scott, would you like to introduce? We've got this beautiful dulcet voice with us this week.
Oh my God, it's so deep and like it's really making me realize how shrill I am as a person. It's like, who's this? Who's that fucking high pitch prick in the background? Oh fuck, it's me. So our very very welcome, and we're very spoilt to have him with us. We have Justin Saw, stand-up comedian, champion of men's mental health, director of, I don't know, however many different community engagement projects he's been a part of over the years. And, of course, father of 2, most important job of all. This is a parenting podcast after all. Got to give the people what they want. And then we layer in by the way, look after your mental health stuff later. So, Justin, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
You've got the 2 kids, bit of an age gap between the 2 of them. I'm on number 1. Alex is on number 3. The question would be, is which one of us is more damaged? Like at this point of the game, I'm 10 weeks into number 1. I'm sure you both remember that pretty well. Can you give me some reassurance that at some point normality will return, or is this kind of peak parenting and then it's all sort of down a very slippery slope from here?
Oh, it's a great question. I think like it's funny because every phase has its own challenges. So you will get reprieve over here and you'll be like, oh my God, like how good is this thing that we're getting back? For example, like co-sleeping, like we're always like, we're never fucking doing that shit. And yet I've still got a toddler that goes to sleep in his bed and then climbs in ours, and he's 3 and a bit now. So there's all these things that you will like slowly get on top of and you're like, yeah, win for us. And then a new attitude, a new phase, a new thing will come along and just go, oh, you thought you had control of the situation. Now here's another problem to have. So I'd be remiss to tell you that you're going to just, finally see this light at the end of the tunnel and everything's going to make sense, because it purely doesn't. But things in one area will get better while you deal with a whole new challenge you could have never imagined. Is that, Alex, have I nailed that from your three deep perspective?
Yep, that's bang on. That's exactly what is
that's like. End of episode.
Yep, that's it. Shit never changes. It always changes. It never gets easier. The challenges changes. No, that's very true, because I've got a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 4-month-old now. Wow. And we've got challenges with each of them at the moment. And to be honest, probably at the moment, Audrey, our newborn, is the easiest, because she's slotted in. She's like, yep, cool, guys, I'm happy to watch. And touch wood, at the moment, I'm saying she's the easiest, because, our eldest daughter, she's now at school. So she's being influenced by a lot of different kids. Like just the other day, she talks about how she doesn't like Frozen anymore. I'm like, but sweetie, that was like your most favorite thing in the world. And she was really proud of a headband that she had on. And then she got to school. She's like, I don't want to wear it. I want to take it off. You take it home. So I'm like, who are these people influencing you? What's going on? Who needs to be murdered? What's going on here? Are you being bullied? Like all these things just start changing. And then you as a parent, like, what do I need to do? And then people just sort of say, well, here's some couple of things and good luck.
It's funny as well when you have multiple, like, and this may be your experience too, Alex, but like the anxiety or like the fear is less when you go around the second time and maybe third time. You don't have all of that same, like, are they going to die every 2 seconds that you have? Am I going to drop them? Am I going to kill them? All of those like things. But then you have like this exhaustion from the phase that like you didn't feel the first time around, like things that you were just like so in it because it's the first time you're ever doing it. So you don't really have time for it to be like, oh God, this again. And then when you have the second one, you're not as anxious. It's a lot more chilled. But then the things that they're doing, sometimes you're like, oh, dude, fuck off. Like, seriously, what are we doing? So I can't even tell you, oh, mate, maybe you won't feel better the first time around. Maybe if you have a second or a third, maybe that'll be the time that it will all make sense. No, there's still just going to be challenges no matter what.
We're going through that with our 6-year-old at the moment, and because she can really hit into these big moments of rage and trying to help her understand her emotions, and we've read up and listened to a lot of professionals and psychologists and sought advice about, okay, in these big moments, how can we help you understand your emotions so that in the long term we create a stable child. But sometimes you just like the internal flame of, I want to just swear my head at you and just tell you to get out of here is right at the surface. And that's not going to be good in the long term, but in the short term you feel like, yeah, nah, stuff you, I'm going to say that. But then you don't, you push that back down, and then at some point later on you try and have a debrief with your partner and go, that was really fucked.
I will never get sick of that Mr. Clean persona where even when you're not talking directly to your kids, you won't tell them to get fucked. Just like, oh, just go and get. And then afterwards, I was talking to my wife and I was like, fucking hell. Okay, so the solution to all of my problem is more children, is what you're both saying. Just get deconditioned to it. And
I'm saying definitely not. I'm saying there's no lesser of two evils. Either you're just going to stay forever heightened, panicked with the one, or you'll have more, become less panicked and more overwhelmed. There is no, and this isn't a PSA for not having children, by the way. It's the greatest thing ever, but I'm just not going to give you any false hope that you are going to get on top of this. I'm not going to come here and feed you lies. There is challenges on the horizon no matter what you do.
Backtrack through any of the episodes where we've had psychologists and neuroscientists and midwives and whatnot, that what you just described then, that peaking out anxiety, that's just me now. Like, it's always been there. But now it's just right on the surface. 8 until 6 o'clock, professional me, passable. But it's like a thin, wet layer of crepe paper where the slightest little poke, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm 9.5 out of 10 under here. This, it's not great. It's not great. I just wanted to jump on something Alex said before about influence and so forth. And because there's a bit of an age gap between your kids, Justin, you've got the 3-year-old and the 9-year-old. Does the 9-year-old, what's the influence on the 3-year-old? Is the 3-year-old sort of coming up quicker in terms of maturity and they go, oh, I want to be like the 9-year-old? Or is the 3-year-old like, nah, fuck this, I'm going to run my own race?
I think the gap has been probably perfect in a way. You have a kid that's just starting school and like sort of going through that change period, but then also they're at school for, 7.5 hours or whatever it is. So you really get to dial into the needs of the second born while not feeling, neglectful for that period of time to the eldest, because that's always a kind of weird balancing act, trying to, your firstborn especially is so cognizant at that age that they've had your attention 24/7, and so when a newborn comes along, that's a really delicate balancing act to make sure they don't feel like it. So having a school-age kid where you can kind of go, cool, baby gets all of my attention, and then I'm going to be really purposeful with the eldest when he gets home from school, but it's a shorter gap of time between finishing school and they do homework and they do all of that, and then it's almost bedtime anyway, and then you can get back to your normal routine. So I think the first thing is I've really found that to be a great balance, but it is crazy the development pace that I've seen from my second born because of having that older brother that he just idolizes. Like, they just absolutely love each other, and even now at 9 and 3, where like 3-year-old, I mean, I reckon Winston was like, wasn't really super behind in speech, but like was definitely didn't talk constantly by the time he was like going into kindy, which is like 4.5, whereas the 3-year-old has been having full conversations with us for over a year now. Like, it's bananas. Like, he full just strings full sentences together, and I think a lot of that influence is having the older brother that you're around constantly and always looking up to. So it's really interesting seeing that. But on the contrary, I think, and I don't know what your experience was like, Alex, but I obviously did an hour in the Fringe this year called Second Child Syndrome, because I was not prepared for just how different personality-wise there could be between two kids, which were, obviously there's always things that are different, but you feel like you've done things almost exactly the same, and yet somehow my wife gave birth to the spawn of Satan in my toddler. Like, he is just a absolute lunatic, and I love him to death. Like, he is also just the funniest and has the greatest personality and imagination I've ever seen, but just crazy, just screaming, jumping, yelling, just a ball of chaos. And I was not prepared after my eldest is the most kind-natured and beautiful, quiet soul of all time. You're like, oh, cool. This is all me, baby. This is like my parenting style. I create these, super calm. No, not at all. I just got lucky. Well, not even lucky, because they both have their own things, but you naively think you've imparted this calm nature into him, and it's just like, no, that's just what he was born with, and now you've got the other side coming through right now.
Have you seen that trickle down personality, Alex? Like yours are like not that sort of spaced out in terms of age, but I mean, Audrey's probably not a great example because she's 14 weeks old or how many weeks long she is. But with your two, having the older girl, middle boy, did you see an acceleration in maturity? I suppose that's the question.
I definitely, one thing that we certainly noticed is that our eldest probably spoke on behalf of our son, who then was quite delayed in his speech. He had no reason to talk. He was like, yeah, she's doing it all for me, so I'm good. And so we had a bit of speech therapy and stuff and got him through that. And even now, he mumbles words up, but it's so cute. I'm like, that's not a problem. That's just gorgeous. Never change. Our eldest, our daughter, she's a firecracker. She will climb every tree that she can find. If she had access to the roof, she would be up there. And my son, as a result, has that attitude as well, but he's a little bit more cautious. And he's also the sweetest little thing and will never argue unless he needs to with his sister. Because sometimes, the fights they get into sometimes are epic. But what I've found is that, I don't know what the difference is between boys and girls, but as a boy, he just seems to do the dumbest things. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, he will just sprint across the house and dive onto a hardwood floor and just get up and start laughing about it. Be like, that was the funniest thing ever. And then I'll just be standing and get headbutted in the crotch. Like, from a distance, he will get a run up and just headbutt me in the crotch. I'm like, mate, what are you?
Had a couple of them.
And I'm just like bowled over in pain. And he's just like, and just runs off. I'm like, why did you do that? And so psychologically speaking, I've got no idea what's going on, but he seems to be experimenting with limits, and that's what they seem to be doing at the moment. How much can I get away with? That can be really challenging sometimes, where you're like, I'm encouraging the experimentation, but I'm in a lot of pain right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you've just even proven the point, like, similar sort of structure, but then having someone speak for you rather than, it just proves that there's no science to it whatsoever, right? And that you'd have the exact same age gap in the exact same scenario and have two very different outcomes, across multiple sort of families or scenarios. But that's the beauty of it, isn't it?
How easy was it to fill an hour of comedy? Because I think some background here is that you do stand-up comedy, and I imagine pre-kid were you a stand-up comedian before kids?
Yeah, I've been doing it for 14 years. Wow, shit. It's ticked over to 14. I was doing it for a long, long time, but it definitely has become, it's so funny. I was hosting our open mic night here on Monday, and there's a comedian that I introduced and I recognized the name, and I was like, I reckon this dude started when I started back in 2012, but I haven't seen him in years. And I caught up with him after he finished his set, and I was like, we gigged together in like 2012, didn't we? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, did you go away for a long time? And he's like, yeah. And then I heard his material was a lot about his kids. And I was like, was it kids that got you back into it? And he's like, yeah, I didn't have anything coming to my mind that I felt really passionate about talking about. That was the thing that just got me feeling the creative juices. I was just thinking things about scenarios and realizing that was kind of, I was writing jokes almost, and decided to get back and do it. And now, he's smashing it again. It was amazing to see him. So the writing process I've found has gotten easier, having so much experience to pull from. I'd written almost every masturbation joke there is to be written for myself personally, right? There's only so many stories about coming too quickly or, something like that I could come up with. So this has been a great evolution for me to talk about parenting now.
The ultimate outcome of coming, really.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's all still in there. There's still a theme tucked within it.
So you've been at it for 14 years. Have you noticed, since your brand, we'll call it a brand of comedy, has changed as your family has developed, has your audience evolved as well? Do you have the same group of people that have, or not the exact same group, but, the people that have followed your journey, they were your audience 14 years ago when they were, shit staring people in their early 20s and out partying, and then they're still coming to see you 14 years later and they've got kids as well and they're still relating to your comedy? Or are you attracting an entirely new audience that are like, yeah, this guy gets it? Like, I just want to go and hang out with that guy. I've never seen him before, but I want to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, look, my comedy has definitely evolved as it is, whether or not it's the subject matter, but just like it's a lot of pilot hours in comedy, right? Like you just kind of realize what works and how, I guess, the evolution has come about from me has been, we do a lot of road shows all across South Australia. We've even hopped over the border a few times and done some shows in rural parts of other states. And those audiences that are generally of an older demographic as it is are the ones that have really taught me how to, I guess, improve and really focus on the construction of the jokes and the nuances of it and the little tweaks to the delivery that can make it hit even harder regardless. Because, we did a lot of footy gigs years ago and like footy clubs and that kind of stuff. And like for me, with my kind of, I guess, rough around the edges style that I had anyway, can walk into a footy club and do a gig with my eyes closed and, they're all going to have a good time because it's really relatable. There's a similar age thing, all of that kind of stuff. And I've grown up around that. I had a very humbling worst bomb of my life in Swan Reach, if you guys are familiar with a little, tiny river town. And there's like a big no-no in stand-up comedy where we say, like, don't put on shows for free. Like, we know you want to, you're a pub out in the, the middle of buttfuck nowhere. You want to put on a free show. We get it. At least make them like register online or do like a donation, do something, give them a barrier for entry because then they've got an emotional attachment to the show in one way, shape or form. If you make it a free show that people that can just walk into that have been in the front bar since 3 p.m. that are just there having dinner and decide to wander across, if they've got no attachment to it, it can just completely throw the show off the rails. And this is exactly what happened in Swan Reach. There was like 100 people in the venue, which should be an amazing show, but they were just not, they were like, they're just sticky beaking. They're just like, there's nothing else for me to do in fucking Swan Reach. So I'm going to go to this thing. Within 2 minutes of me being on stage, this old lady was like, oh, language. That's all she said was all language. And it just, for whatever reason in that moment in time, and again, this is like 6 or 7 years ago, I was nowhere near sort of the, I guess, prowess that I am now. And it just, I lost every thread of a joke I've ever told in my life. I completely lost it, walked off stage early. Like it was bad, just like a catastrophic bomb. But it's like, I'd always heard, I listened to a lot of comedy podcasts and I was like, you've got to have those to really like remind yourself of how human you are. And so I think, again, the echo chamber of like doing gigs to my friends, doing gigs in footy clubs, like I needed to go out and have a gig where I was really like up against it to make me go, hey, you've got to bring it and be able to bring it in any scenario to any crowd and any demographic. So I think the parenting stuff has really helped me because, again, you're connecting with a lot more range of the audience. You've got, quite often young parents right through to grandparents, great-grandparents, right? But parenting is a very, linear thread through all of those. And so that's definitely helped me play better to a wide range of audiences for sure.
I love a good bomb story in some respect because I respect that the glue that holds everything together in the scene. Like from what I've read, what I've heard, talking to other comedians, it's almost something like everyone that does the work that you do in respect to being a comedian, if you can tell a good bombing story amongst your peers, they're like, yep, cool, you're one of us, you're in the fold. And it just makes me respect the living shit out of you guys who do that because like tying it back to parenting, like this very, not a made up story, this literally happened like 90 minutes ago. Felix, he's got a little sensory tent thing that he goes in. It's got polka dots on it. It's high contrast. And he loves it. He loves the fucking tent. Like it's the greatest hits, right? It's whenever I'm like, man, I'm bombing out here in the tent. This is great. I put him in the tent and he's just like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is shit. And he's just hysterical. And inside I'm shattered. And that's just a sign to me that I would not cut it in the slightest doing what you do because I'd be like, all right, well, I've bombed out. So does your 9-year-old, because I suppose at the age of 9, they're sort of roughly understanding that dad goes to work or mum goes to work or both go to work or whatever it might be. Does your 9-year-old understand that's part of your job, is to make people laugh? Does he look at that and go, yeah, my dad, like, yes, he does all this cool stuff, which is probably well beyond his level of comprehension in the mental health space. But, does the 9-year-old, if you were to ask him, what does dad do for a living, what would be his response? Like, how would he tackle that question?
He knows more about my banking day job probably than either of the other two, unfortunately, because I work from home. So that's what he sees I guess, is his experience with me. I'm home 5 days a week. So obviously he doesn't know the ins and outs, but he would overhear, conversations that I'm having in Zoom meetings. So the thing that he could probably explain the most about is actually my day to day. And then funnily enough, the mental health stuff is probably even second. Like, I think we I guess getting back to the parenting side of things, like, we're really cognizant of like being super proactive in having those conversations and like talking about what is mental health and what is this thing that you're experiencing and how does that relate back to things that people could call a mental health challenge and, lots of that kind of stuff. So I talk to him a lot about that stuff and what I do. And when I go and do training and stuff like that, I kind of give him a very watered down, but at least some sort of version of it that is tangible to him. And the comedy is something that, again, he loves the idea that I do it, but he's never seen, I think I've shown him one joke about him, and it's about me getting so drunk that I piss the bed and walking and then the joke goes, I walk past my son's room, he's 5 years old, and he goes, "Can't even I don't do that anymore." Sorry for dropping a C-bomb, but that's in the joke. And so I think that's the only a joke of mine that he's seen, and he just, absolutely loves it. So he's said a few times, like, I want to do comedy when I get older, and he's like come to me before with a few jokes that he's like written himself. And so, I think he's very fascinated by it, which is that's a cool place to be when you're a kid.
That is very, very cool, because we've had a few different personalities in. We've had musicians, we've had public figures in the sporting world, and I think that's a lot easier for kids to sort of immediately to latch onto, to go, yep, dad plays footy or dad plays guitar. That's like very overtly obvious how that pans out. But that's cool to hear that your son can look at that and go, yeah, even though he's only got a little taste, he just got a little, Oman's bush of what happens behind the scenes.
Well, I think it really connected recently, because I finally felt he was old enough to watch the old Carl Barron DVDs, the things that we all grew up on.
Yeah.
And I realized about 9, there's really nothing. I had to think back to all. I was like, there's nothing really like super edgy or like, disgusting in that set. It's a lot of very clean jokes. And dude, he like hysterically laughing through that. Like it was weird. I had this like one of those weird out of body experiences where like I remembered being on my like dad's couch with my best mate staying over. He brought the Carl Barron DVD and him and my dad watched it together, and me and him just like howling on the couch. And it was a very reminiscent thing of like his response, which is cool to see as well. We're talking about a 20-something-year-old DVD now as well, that you're just like, does this still land to a 9-year-old from this current generation? And just didn't miss a beat. Found it all just as hilarious as what I did.
So speaking of classic comedy, like, and I don't know if you'd even call this classic comedy because it's so original. Justin, if you rip this bit off, we would not blame you. It's fucking that good. People rave about it. They won't stop sort of begging us to do more of these per episode. We've had a request to do a whole episode of these. The segment's called Word of the Week.
It's time for Word of the Week. It's time for Word of the Week. It's time, oh yeah, for Word of the Week.
So this week's Word of the Week, and I've picked this because I am living this existence almost nonstop. The Word of the Week is infantdiachesia.
What?
Infantdiachesia. You heard of that before?
I haven't.
No,
Come across it,
not
Justin?
at all.
No? So Infant dysphagia it's a normal developmental condition. So this is, if your kids have done this, and I will get you to weigh in on this, where babies, it's for sort of under 9 months. If it's beyond that, probably problematic. They strain, they grunt, they cry, they go beetroot red, they tense up, their whole bodies are stiff as a board, and then they just take a normal dump. So it's an interesting phase that happens in a lot of kids where parents kind of freak out and they go, wow, my kid's super constipated or having the worst possible time of their life. And it comes down to this condition is because the baby has not yet learned to coordinate the muscles. So the difference between the bowels, the abdominal muscles and the sphincter, the baby hasn't connected all of that chain together. So they're in the process of tensing up the abdominal muscle. They're actually tightening that sphincter as well. So the poop air goes nowhere, and they absolutely freak the fuck out. So if you have come across, well, first of all, let me ask the question: have you ever come across that before? You guys are, you're veterans in this space. Have you had your kid just freak out, straining, grunting, carrying on, and then just taking a normal dump? Or is that just something that I'm living with?
Definitely experienced it. And it is, again, if you talk about like when it's your firstborn as well, and so you are like so hyper aware of every just even incremental behavioral change, mood change, like it's very scary because you are seeing them like, literally turn purple, and you're like, something's so wrong. And then and again, the other thing is when they do finally, relieve themselves, let's call it, you're expecting like this is going to be like cataclysmic level of shit. And then it's just like a little, couple of rabbit poos. You're like, what are we doing here? I built myself up for this explosion. Me and my wife are in the background doing rock, paper, scissors to see when this finally arrives, who's going to be responsible for this. And it's anticlimactic, to say the least.
I always found that they'll go through those phases of needing, when they're just understanding how their body works, and when they get it out. Like, I feel a sense of relief when they finally go. I'm like, oh, you're going to be relaxed after that. But what always throws me off is when they make eye contact with you in the middle of it. They're just staring you down, just going, I'm doing this right now. And you just hear the noise and you're like, oh, and exactly. Should we rock, paper, scissors for that? But it's always at 3:00 in the morning. You can't see properly. You're trying to wipe. It's all over you. Then it's all over them. You're like, oh, you have to change the sheets.
I am going to say so right now. That's going to probably piss you off a lot, Alex, because that eye contact, when Felix gets going, when the goat starts, is what we call it in our household, when he starts bleating and he starts going red and he starts getting really worked up, the only way on most occasions that he will actually go, okay, I need to coordinate this, I've got to do some of the work, is if he's on my wife's lap, fierce eye contact. Oh. And so rock, paper, scissors doesn't exist when it comes to who's going to clean that up, because he won't do it on me. He's like, no, I'm freaking out. The weird man's here. I can't coordinate this. Mum, take me because I need to, I got business to do.
I remember I was very early into my tenure as a parent when I had the changing their nappy already, so they're already bare, and got the projectile from the rear like straight onto me. Have you had one of those yet?
I haven't.
I haven't had it on me. Like
you've never had one, Alex, either.
Nah.
You've never been projectile.
No.
Wow.
No,
I've had one with both my boys.
I've been like Neo from the Matrix, just backing off and not copying anything at all.
The closest I've come, and I've already told this story, but I'll tell it just for you, Justin, is this is a boy. When boys piss, like it's not like it's just fucking, it's happening. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
I looked at him. We were mid-change. He was, he was Tony the Tiger style, top on, pants off. And I was like, that's the face. He's about to piss. Here we go. Grabbed the nappy, fully ninja'd it over the top of him, and he just shit. And I was like,
yes.
Wow, okay, no worries. And then when I leant forward to like whisper to him, like, fucking all right, I'm on to you. He threw up on my hand. And I
yes.
was like, okay.
He's like,
all
I'm
right.
getting you one way or another.
Yeah. He's like, I'm here to party. Let's do this.
You're getting some sort of bodily fluids on you.
Yeah. Felix's fluids. On the poop and piss and vomiting note, let's have a little break here and we will come back with some How to Dad action. And what I'm really looking forward to is picking your brain about the next step.
Oh, my friend had a baby. Life flipped like a coin. Oh, my friend had a baby. Chaos joined the joy.
Wow, Justin is a stand-up guy. I hope he's given 5 stars. And you should. I love you. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. Bye. Enjoy the second half. Jordan, second half. See ya, legends.
Parenthood's a dubstep drop, not some easy dream. Oh, my friend had a baby.
All right, welcome back, all of our amazing listeners and our really obscure amount of people that listen in Korea. Thank you. That's a really odd fact. I don't know how you stumbled across this, but you
Shout
make
out.
up 16% of our audience. So shout out to Korea
That's
on
awesome.
this episode.
North or south?
I'm not
One guess.
Everything I was about to say then was terrible. I was like,
I thought I'd come in and save you then with that.
yeah, thank you.
quick.
I was like, there is nothing I can say right now that is living like right on the fucking tip of my tongue. That's not going to lead to like a mountain of cancellations. We're joined by Justin, who is father of 2, stand-up comedian, director of Men's Mental Health Services, The Next Step. But before we get into the next step stuff, very, very important that we get this segment rolling. It's called How to Dad. Cue up that music. Let's go.
How to dad, how to do, fix a boo-boo or a shoe, got a tantrum, got no clue. How to dad, it's in your hand, step by step you'll understand. How to dad, you're the man.
Alex, what is your How to Dad question?
So I was reflecting the other day about times that I've been a bit of a dick. And it took a while to get through all the instances. But one thing that popped up was when I remember my sister bringing a boyfriend home for the first time. And I was a bit of a dick to that boyfriend. And because I thought that was what the cool older brother did, is that he was protective and he was standoffish and he gave him the cold shoulder. And I realized later on was that was a pretty shitty thing to do, is that I didn't need to act like that to this young lad who'd come into the house and so on. And so my How Did That question for you guys is, as I guess, Justin, you've got a son who's not quite at dating age yet, but of all the kids that we look after is probably the closest to that. And Scott, it's how are you maybe perceiving what this future is going to be like, but how are you going to help your kids navigate that as they enter that stage of life? Because my oldest is a daughter, and then I have a son and then another daughter. I'm terrified about both of their journeys as they enter that. But Justin, have you thought about that at all?
No, not really. It's a great question. I mean, it doesn't help that I was a fucking dork myself in going through that. I talk a lot in my stand-up comedy about the time that I spent firmly seated in the friend zone as a teenager. So, he's probably not going to want any wisdom from me about how to manage that as he enters it. As an older man, once he gets through the awkwardness, your boy shined, right? Like once I figured things out, I can give him
Big glow
every
up.
advice in the world. Once you connect the humor with the, sweetness, a little bit of all of that kind of stuff, I've got him. But awkward teenage phase, I could not have done worse. And I can't tell him what the answer was. I can't look back in hindsight and go, I can, probably stop sending poems to everyone. That might have been definitely something I would give him as a lesson. No girl wants your poems, dude. Just because you're good at it doesn't mean they want to see it. So there you go. That would be the one piece of advice I could give him strongly. But other than that, I think to be honest, without the jokes aside, I think like staying true to yourself and your like personality and like what you enjoy and just not trying to fit a mold of what your friends think you should be. Like I got influenced a lot by friends and what they felt or who they felt I should be talking to or that kind of stuff. And I think that would be the one bit of genuine advice that I would give him. Like, and this is not just about dating. This is just about everything. Like be true to yourself in what you care about experiencing and what you care about doing rather than trying to fit the mold for potential dating person or what your friends think that you should be going or going for or doing. I think that was probably a huge pitfall for my young adulthood, and that's probably the thing that I would try to impart on him.
How the fuck am I going to follow that? Like, I don't know. Jesus, that was just so fucking perfect. Like, can you come and raise my son?
I'll send you the invoice again.
Yeah, please do. I'll just learn to like lip. What's it called when they do the lip syncing
sync?
over the top? Yeah.
Oh,
I'll
dub.
Just
Yeah,
this
dub.
episode, that bit. I'll just be like in the background and yeah. No, that is a really good summary, and I'll add on to that because. Like growing up, you sort of obviously very wrongly, you learn this strange lesson about what it means to be a man, right? And to be a man is to be tough and to be, constantly throwing yourself into danger. And the solution to things is with violence or with aggression or volume. And the only way to, for lack of a nice way to put it, to be the top dog is to be the loudest barking person in the room. And over time, you look back and you go, why did I think that? Like, where did that come from? What part of, media did I learn that really shitty lesson from that's what was right to do? And I remember growing up, some of the earlier introductions to fitness, you get given a punching bag. You go and you learn martial arts. And there's a bunch of other boys the same age as you. And you're all there just, throwing haymakers at a heavy bag, or you're at home sparring this imaginary bad guy. And in your head, you sort of tell yourself, well, one day I'm going to overcome all these problems with my fists. And it never leads to anything good. And so what I'm trying to say is the lesson I'm going to try to impart that I'm going to pass on to the next generation is you don't need to tackle it with toughness or being, like, as you said, Alex, the big tough guy in the corner who doesn't say anything and your arms folded and you're looking really sinister and really scary. You can solve a lot of the problems with words and you can kind of work your way through a lot of really complicated situations by just being smart, by winning over the people in the room, and to sort of dip into it because you're here, Justin, by being the funny guy in the room. I have solved so many, and this is just both personal and professionally, massive problems in my life using humor.
Yeah, it cuts through where nothing else does. And it's a huge tool.
Yeah, being self-depreciating and poking fun at yourself and all that kind of thing. Like I remember the last time someone, and look, I'm not going to be that guy who sits here and says I've never thrown a punch at someone or I've never been punched in the face. That would be a bold-faced lie. I'm not proud of any of those moments in my life. But the moments where I am proud, where the last time I've had someone actually try to get aggressive with me, where I've said, oh, do you want to be known as the guy that punched the guy with a room temperature IQ? And it just sent everyone in the room and they pissed themselves laughing And that was it. We were all buds after that. It was fine. That was a really long way of me saying that my objective with my son is to move away from that mentality that men need to solve their problems that way. And we can be human and we can sort of break it down and we can use our words to overcome.
And not take yourself too seriously. I think when we're teenagers, like we think like every moment is the catalyst for the rest of your lives. And I think if I can do anything to help him realize that this is just a blip on such a bigger radar of your life, and that like the more that you can just not take yourself seriously now, because you're going to look back and cringe no matter what phase this is, no matter what you decide, whether you've got a GHD straightener and, you know, a can of hairspray like I did as a teenager, whatever form that takes, you're going to look back at it and cringe. So like, don't take it too seriously, whatever it is. It's you're going to laugh at it regardless.
Isn't it the most punishing fact that I remember hearing exactly that from so many adults that are just like, look, you will move past this. It'll be fine. And you look back and I remember thinking like, what do you know? You don't know anything. Like you don't know what it's like to be me. And look, you know, I was a poultry guy as well. You know, I had my, yeah.
Why does that not surprise me? I don't know.
Oh, fuck off. And look, I got some opinions about tough guy Alex's older brother in the background. And I was going to comment on, you know, your sister's boyfriend being like, was that fucking Ray Romano? That was just Sesame just then. Yeah, it's so true. Maybe there's a secret sauce in there somewhere of how to break that down so it's not so cringe with the next generation of, oh, I remember back in, you know, I was there, you know, I used to have my, I think the modern day parent realizes that approach doesn't really work in its traditional sense of trying to hard, fast relate. But look, we got the internet now. We can chat GPT our way through it.
I think it's the way you articulate it with like integrity and honesty about your own personal experiences. I think that's the difference. I think that's the glue that's missing, is that it was only ever that part. It was only ever, don't worry about it. You're not going to care about it. It's more like, then tell me, you know, speak from your personal experience. You know, tell me about how you were writing poems until year 11 and, you know, sending them out to every girl that would give you the slightest bit of attention and wondering why it wasn't working. Like, give the actual, I guess, you know, reality of the shit that you did to be like, oh, wow, that's great. Like, I never got that side of it. I only ever got, don't worry about it. You're not going to care about this in 10 years' time. And as a teenager, you're like, how could you possibly understand what this means to me? Like, rah. Whereas, like, I think if you can give real tangible evidence of the shit that you thought was the most important thing in the world that you just truly isn't, maybe. And again, like all things, we'll naively think that we're going to be able to cut through and break that cycle and then still somehow fail miserably at it anyway. So, but we can dream.
It's so bad though, because one of my favorite moments in this entire podcast was Peter Coombe telling us that he writes a poem for all of his grandkids every year, and I'm just and part of in the back of my head I'm like, but Peter said it was cool, like you know, I can bring it back.
Well, that's what I say in my joke. My year 9 English teacher said it was cute, and I thought, well, this is my ticket to the Pussy Palace. That's what I said. And it was not.
Well, I'll throw that back at you, Alex. So, you know, sort of blasting you with your own how to dad question. You've got a son, you've got 2 daughters as well, but, you know, I know we've been heavy on the son chat with that side of things purely because of obviously Justin and I are just oozing with testosterone. We only have the capacity to produce sons. It's a blessing and a curse. It is what it is. But, you know, when your son comes to you and he says, you know, I've got this problem, how am I going to solve it? Or he comes to you and he says, right, or you see him, actually, that's a better way to think about it, because he's not going to come to you. He's not going to come and say like, oh, Dad, I'm mad. Like, you're going to see him furious about something. How are you going to tackle that?
I've got no idea. I'm interested to see how that goes, because we learn so much about them as they grow older. And at the moment he comes to me with, oh, my older sister hit me. And that's sort of the extent of his girl problems at the moment. I guess because I have that perspective of being a male and growing up in that space, that I will be able to connect with him in that way and we can have those chats. And I think we're lucky because we've had that education. And yes, we do. There is toxic masculinity out there, which is a big problem for, I think, these young kids growing up that have such easy access to the internet, which I am terrified about. What I'm really worried about is fear for myself, is not knowing how to help my daughters when they're out there.
That was going to be my question for you. Like that, how do you navigate that? And also like the whole, I always think of, Bad Boys, when the boy comes to pick up the daughter and they're both at the door, like, you at least 30, right? That is the thing that like, there's part of me very glad that I've got boys, because I just can't imagine. Like, I know how defensive I am as a parent already. Like, what little shit is going to possibly be good enough for my daughter? That's going to be such a challenge.
So I had a situation just the other week where my daughter came home. She'd been out of our school care during school holidays. She said, "Oh, Dad, I want to show you a game that someone showed me today." I'm like, "Okay, cool." She's like, "Okay, so you say this, then you put your face down." So I put my face down, and she slapped me. And she said, "That's the game." And I was like, "Okay, who showed you that?" And immediately, like, my blood pressure and my temperature is rising. I said, "Darling, did someone hit you and call it a game?" She's like, "Yeah, they did. It was a fun game." And then I sort of interrogated how hard, and it turns out they didn't hit hard at all. But my inner John Wick was ready to fire on all cylinders. I couldn't believe the reaction that my body had of this seething, I must kill, probably a 7-year-old. But there is sort of this animal instinct that kicks in with you as a father, where you have this need to protect. And I know that is not the appropriate response to every single situation. But that in me was a really strange experience to have. And I'm thinking, okay, in 10 years' time, when some of those situations that she may get herself into may be a little bit more serious, how am I going to react appropriately without getting myself in trouble? Because that is sort of your guttural instinct to do. And we're sort of that age where that masculinity of big, brawny and punchy was still, we grew up seeing that around us quite a lot. I don't know whether that's too much these days, but
would that ever go away though? Like, I just can't imagine with a daughter involved that the next generation, it's primal. It's something like built into, I guess, the DNA of human beings, I think, to react that way to something happening to a child, regardless of, maybe more the logical reasoning skills of like whether you actually execute on that or not might be where we improve as a society. But I think that feeling you're talking about, that's very involuntary. And I think that is just like a natural thing that you couldn't teach someone not to have that, because it just is, it's animalistic to feel that way. And it's only going to get harder when you're talking about, boys bullying or, a heartbreak or something like that. You're going to have a tuxedo on and the hair's going to be right down to here, and you'll kill your own dog just to like really add to the story.
We've spoken about this a couple of times before, but so Felix, my son Justin, he's the first boy on either side of our families for 29 years. So for nearly 3 decades, he's the first boy. My little brother, who you've met, he was the last boy.
Wow. Right? And he's 29 now? That's crazy. That makes me feel old.
Yeah. It's a really weird, almost privileged position to be in, because Felix is going to be growing up amongst strong women, right? So my hope is he grows up with a very healthy fear of being shit towards girls, because they're all strong girls. They'll beat the shit out of him. They are tough little girls, or tough little women, actually. I think about my brother, I think about me, I think about, the other men in his life. Well, what are we going to share with him without sort of dampening that wonderful collection of lessons he's got to learn by being surrounded by strong women? Sort of to piggyback on what was said before about the internet and what kids are exposed to now, and that toxic masculinity that comes in, it seems to come in waves. Like it's in, it's out, it's, it's Tate, and now we hate Tate, and all these. I mean, I've always hated I'm not like a Tate apologist, so I should have prefaced that. But like, it's very. I suppose when I think about what it's going to look like in 10, 15 years, I'm hoping that the gap between that toxic masculinity sort of onslaught just continues to grow and grow and grow until it's just this weird presence that pops up every now and then that everyone rolls their eyes at, I guess.
It's one of those things where like anything that gets that much publicity is just like a gross corner of the world that's not actually the reality of what it's really like at the coalface. I know we want to talk about the mental health stuff, and maybe this is the perfect segue into it, but when you're actually at ground level and at the grassroots, like seeing the evolution of like, young men happening in this part of the world, you can really see that there is a shift, and that, people are going to get caught up in and swept up in that dumb shit like that, just like they are in any other fad or any other craze, whether they're eating Tide Pods or smashing their jaw with a hammer to looks max, whatever it is, there's going to be dumb shit that just gets cult followings for stupid reasons. And so I think what really pleases me is the shift in generally what we're seeing around the ability to actually communicate and the ability to understand that it's important to be able to do that. And hopefully that's going to be the thing that moves the needle more than these kind of cult figures that almost rage bait their way to popularity. I think that's always going to be something that exists, and to some degree you just have to kind of ignore it and look at the bigger picture stuff.
Well, let's latch on to that for a hot minute, because talking about moving the needle, we've got the next step. You're the director of the next step, and truly moving the needle. Amazing direction, reducing stigma, helping men to talk about the concept of mental health. It's one of the very few times in life where I've gone, I'm glad I'm alive at this, at this period of humanity. Fantasize about going to Woodstock and doing coke in the 90s in New York. This kind of thing where I see what you guys are doing, and you in particular, Justin, to promote mental health amongst men. It's something that Alex and I have spoken about a lot. We've had psychologists on the show. We've spoken about it from the experience of a couple of guys that have been through our own mental health challenges in various ways. What led you to the next step? Walk us through it. What's involved with it? We're all ears. Let's go.
The thing I talk about all the time is I just kind of found myself like mental health adjacent a lot of my life, whilst not really until much older, which I'll touch on, but not really having any struggles myself as a young kid, but just watching a lot of people and not knowing what they were experiencing was mental health challenges, was just knowing that they were having a really rough time of it, and just being really connected to the idea of wanting to help them was something that happened very young. I always talk about the fact, my dad moved here from the UK. His brother got diagnosed with leukemia. He had an accident in high school, broke his neck. They operated too early. He ended up being left disabled. And then his brother died of SIDS shortly after his other brother died of leukemia while he was rehabbing. Like, just the most fucking insane story. And so, like, I always was so drawn to like his perseverance through that, right? Like the way that he rose above all of that to provide for us was something that I always was just fascinated and so drawn to. So there was that, plus then seeing a lot of other people in my life go through these challenges. And so I was like, how can I connect some of what I see my dad do, which in a way was not also handling it the best way he could have. He was very just march forward and, not talk about problems and do all of that, but didn't then go down the path of coping with it in the wrong ways, like alcohol or drugs or whatever. But then also all these other people that somewhat maybe needed some of that ability to forge ahead, and just being so connected to both of those ideas, and just finding myself in situations where I was just like helpers to people experiencing something as a teenager. All those years in the friend zone did at least teach me about connecting to so many different people in many walks of life. And so it was just something I was always extremely passionate about. I used to talk about like wanting to be a school counselor for years when I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then again, I went and did some other garbage course that I dropped out of by getting drunk at the uni bar every day and just never really found what it was that I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden you've got bills and you go and get a $25,000 loan for an XR8 because you're a fucking idiot, and you you just kind of drift off into corporate world. And then when I started, so obviously I start comedy in 2012, and again that sort of tickles that itch of like making people feel good that I always had sort of as a part of my personality. And that really, I guess, scratched that itch a little bit. There was still something else that I felt was missing. And it wasn't until we went into lockdown that we started the podcast. And I was like, I want a big part of this podcast to be talking about mental health. And at that point, I'd also realized my own challenges that I'd gone through in my early 20s, where I went through some pretty bad times with drugs and alcohol. And the thing that really always shocked me was that, like, in that time of my life, and maybe you guys can connect with this idea as well, like there were periods where if you had asked me, how's your mental health, I would have said, fucking, perfect, mate. But if you looked at what my behaviors were and what my thoughts were like, and it wasn't like suicide ideation, but it was not good. It was a very, very dark place. And if I was in that place right now, I would tell you that I'm going through a very severe mental health challenge. Like, it's very crazy, just the mindset of like, no, this is all normal to feel what I'm feeling, this like dread, this panicked self-loathing, all of these things were just like part of growing up. This need to just like binge on alcohol and try to write myself off and eat 15 pingers in HQ and stay up for as many days as I could in a row. And that was all just like, because the people around me are doing the same things. We're all just kids growing up. And yet I look at and it wasn't until some of those mates started going really down dark paths that I was like, oh shit, there's a bigger problem here. Like, this isn't just growing up. This is a lot of broken, like, boys, let's call it what it is, because we weren't, men at that time. This is a lot of broken boys that are just like echo chambering this idea of survival with each other while just completely annihilating themselves. And so coming through that and then getting with my now wife and realizing just how dark things were before that dawn, just really lit a fire under me to want to speak about that experience and try to maybe help other men realize that it's not normal to feel that way. It's not normal to cope that way. And how can I use my learned experience through that? And also, I guess, the naivety that, like, I thought that you had to be suicidal to be experiencing a mental health challenge, that like you needed to be, having those sort of thoughts to be considered struggling. And I think a lot of men have that same thing where they're like, well, I don't want to kill myself, so therefore, like, I just need to harden the fuck up. And it's like, no, like, you're not feeling that way right now, but like, what if you got all of these other really concerning thoughts and patterns of behavior? There's still something that we need to address. And so started the podcast, had a big focus around mental health, and music was sort of the two things that we really honed in on, because that was the stuff that me and my co-host was passionate about. And it was just through a mutual friend that they were like, hey, we love the pod. We listen to it all the time. We love you talking about mental health. There's a group down in the south of Adelaide called the Next Step Australia. They're doing awesome work down there. Like, you should get them on the podcast. And so the origin story of the Next Step is that through COVID, they were just two mates that had lost people to suicide in the earlier years, had attempts themselves, and just were, again, really passionate about the space. One of the co-founders is now actually a PhD psychologist and just, an incredible human being. And they started an Instagram page. That's all it was. It was not a not-for-profit. It was not an organization. It was not a website. It was nothing. It was a Instagram page. And the idea of it was all of their local footy community, MMA gyms, all of those groups. We want you to jump onto the page, and then we're going to create a group chat out of that. We want everyone to stay in contact. We're in lockdown. We don't want to find out that anyone, ends up losing the battle to the black dog through this really insanely obscure period of time. So let's just stay in touch. And then through doing that, people were just like, thank you for the amazing work you've done putting this together. We want to give you money. We want to donate. And they were like, well, this is not what we're here for. Like, we're just trying to create a group. And it just kept growing. And then they started doing community events and it kept growing. And eventually they were like, we got to do something. Like, people really want to support this idea. So they went and spoke to like a business manager, got registered not-for-profit status. And, you know, when I met them on the podcast, this was before they were a not-for-profit. It was still just a page that was sort of running events. I just connected with the two blokes that had co-founded it unbelievably well and just sort of said, look, if there's anything I can ever do, I'm obviously from the north, you guys are from the south, there's something I can do to kind of help bridge the gap down here, etc. And just started running events down here and just getting involved. And it was just through my connection to them over time, they were just like, look, we really need a third director and someone to kind of help take this vision to the next step. Well, pun intended. And so, yeah, now I've been director for about 2 years. We train a program called Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training, where we actually teach people like how to like carry out an intervention with someone that's going through suicide ideation or behavior. You know, we run men's groups in the north and south, community events, and yeah, it's just a passion project on the side of comedy and on the side of my day job that just allows me to really connect with that thing that I've been passionate about since I was even a young kid.
In the next step, and because obviously this is a parenting-based podcast, and you know that's our largest demographic audience. How many men that come through do you see that are dads?
Oh, so many. And we actually, like, interestingly with the training, like, obviously we are a men's mental health podcast. And the reason we are that is because the statistics are very unfortunately that, you know, we lose 9 people a day. And of that 9, it's 7 that are men, right? So we don't exclude women by any nature. It's just that we think the biggest concern in that stat is that it's 7 out of 9 are men. But we've trained more women than what we've trained men. We've trained a massive, like we trained like, I think it was like 9 or something SSOs from schools down south. We've trained a whole heap of nurses and just community leaders. And so these people, these women especially, are the ones that are quite often on the front line with young men that we're trying to help make sure that they don't become a statistic. So those women almost all are parents as well, right? Like either, and that's part of the reason why they want to do the training is because they want to be able to be better in their role. Perhaps it is relative to their work that they do, but also as a parent, they want to learn how to be able to handle that situation if they're ever, God forbid, faced with that challenge. So yeah, it makes up a very, very large percentage of the people that we connect are parents as well.
It's such an interesting thing that you talk about with that, being able to intervene and how to prepare, how to be ready in society to help someone else, which is, I think, is such a selfless thing to, I guess, mentally be aware I want to be able to help, which seems to be so much about what the next step is all about. But I had an experience where I was riding to work one day in the city and this young woman was running around in the middle of the road quite frantic, and I thought, oh, she's just trying to navigate traffic here to try and run across the road. But in about those 3 seconds that I rode past her on my bike, I noticed that she didn't have shoes on. She had tears streaming down her face. She had medical bandages on her, and we were just outside the local public hospital. And I realized she was trying to throw herself in front of traffic. And I've gone, I could keep riding my bike here, or I could stop and try and help. Now, I stopped, I pulled over, put my bike to the side. I couldn't get close to her, and I knew getting close to her was going to be not the right thing to do in the moment. So all I could do was try and slow traffic down. So I went probably 10, 20 meters up the road and was just signaling cars, slow down, slow down. She'd run across the other side, so I'd have to go across diagonally, slow down, slow down. Of course, people are driving by. They've got no idea. They're like, what the hell is going on? She realizes what I'm doing, starts hiding behind parked cars to try and then jump out in front of cars because they can't see her. And of course, I am just in this heightened state of what is going on. And I can see medical staff at the hospital standing out on the corner, but for whatever reason, because it's not their jurisdiction, they're not intervening.
Wow.
I'm on the phone the entire time to the police trying to explain where this person is. And the operator on the phone was phenomenal. He was really supportive. And then finally, what felt like 20 minutes, the cops arrived of me trying to stop this woman from being on someone's bonnet. Because you think about the person that hits them as well, that person's going to have that impact on them too. The police finally arrived. She's still in hysterics. They've tackled her. The hospital staff have finally come across. And I just said to her, like, what, do you need me to do anything? She's like, no, you're fine. You can go. And I jumped on my bike and immediately fell apart. Just broke down, had this huge drop and just didn't know what to do. So I rode to work, went to get changed, and immediately called my wife and tried to explain what happened. Then and she said, do you need me to pick you up? And I'll just let you know. So I went up to work and pulled one of who I knew who was a support person, just explained to them, broke down in front of them again. I'm like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I'm at work and doing this. And then I decided, like, just give me an hour just to see how I feel. And then I ultimately decided I'm just going to go home. I'm not in the right place to try and be normal in an office today, having just experienced that. I've got no idea what's happened to this girl. All I know is the police got there, the hospital intervened. Who knows what happened? She would have been maybe 18.
Wow.
I then did the thing of, okay, we've got a mental health support service, you can do that. Did that, had a counsellor that I will unfortunately say was absolutely useless about the situation.
It's unfortunate.
I'm the one that had to create the conversation the entire time. They're like, yeah. Like, this is not what I need, because I've received, just maintenance in the past from mental health professionals, which is fantastic. And I then went and found another one who was great and really helped me through those. I think for me, just understanding or not understanding what would bring someone to that decision to do that. Yeah. How, Justin, for you, how do you even start that conversation?
Yeah. It's really tough, man. Like, it's one of those things where, and it's a big thing that I guess we talk about is like, I guess in it, we've talked a lot. We might as well keep the theme going just around, I guess, the generational problems that we've had around the way that mental health was spoken about. And one of the big parts of the training is like looking and reflecting on what are our own attitudes about suicide and how important understanding what our attitudes are towards the subject matter and how that might affect our ability to help someone if their attitudes perhaps are not the same, right? And so a lot of us went through the whole hearing our parents or our parents' parents or whatever talk about it being selfish and it being, all of these kinds of things. What I've, I guess, learned through, and I was probably one that would put myself in that category as a teenager, especially when I had people that had attempted, I probably was a little bit naive myself and was like, it's a bit selfish that they would be willing to do that. And what you learn is that, like, the mind is such a unfathomable labyrinth, and that feeling is truly what is believed to be the only way out of this thing that they're experiencing, and that feeling of like, I am a burden to the people around me, and that they are truly better off if I was not here, is something that is such a common theme through people that we experience, that it's like, how could we possibly say that they are selfish for doing what they, for whatever moment, believe that is the right answer. And so getting people, I guess, to understand that is their experience and we can't pass judgment for that is a big part of what we try to make sure that people are aware of.
Can I jump in then? And you two might find this really interesting. Justin, you may be aware of this already. Alex, you may as well. But have you ever heard of the phrase "philo de se"?
No.
Never heard that before. So that's actually the origin story of the phrase "to commit suicide."
Yes.
It's a Latin phrase that means felon of himself. And that rolled and it grew because the idea of, committing suicide was you were committing a crime. You were committing a crime both in the sense of the law and in the eyes of God, which is why a lot of mental health professionals now that are a bit more in tune with what those things look like. They'll use phrases like "died by suicide," as opposed to
taken their own life,
suicide, or taken their own life. And you know, when you think about in simple little changes in the wording like that, all suicides, of course, are a huge tragedy, no matter how they come about or why they've come about. But you think for when we grew up, like we're all in our 30s now, the phrase committing suicide, I don't know about you guys, I dare say you grew up with that as the phrase that you heard. And that's been around since the mid 1600s. Like it's only in the last 7 to 10 years that's changed. You know, we've moved away from the idea that to be that mentally unwell, to be in such a dire strait where you think the only way out is by suicide. It's only in the last decade that it's stopped being a crime by definition in the way that we use language. Yeah. And I think that's a really sort of important point to point out in terms of how we're changing our views on mental health and what those actions look like. But think about that. Like we're talking, you know, 450, 470 years of calling this a crime, when in fact probably the true crime is the fact that we haven't been talking about this openly the entire time.
Yeah. I'll give you another great example to build on that. And I talk about this in the training, but also in every, you know, community event that I've ever ran, because it's something that I just connect with so well myself. And I see every single training that I run, everyone asks this question. So it must just be so much in the zeitgeist. But that is that, like, if you're faced with a situation where you are talking to someone who you're concerned from the conversation so far or from the behaviors that you've seen that there may be suicide, you know, on the table essentially, right? And the training teaches you, and this is, again, a program made by Living Works, backed by over 40 years of research. So it's not just something that, you know, our little charity has created. We were trained to deliver this program, but it teaches you that you need to ask the question directly about suicide, right? So you're listening to that person, or you're maybe seeing some changes in their behavior, and now you're talking to them. And that one of the very crucial parts of a sort of the intervention model is that you need to ask directly, hey, what I'm hearing or what I'm seeing is very concerning. Are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about taking your own life? Are you something like that, something that's very direct? And the question that we get every single time is, what if they weren't? And have I just planted the seed in their mind, right? Every single time we get that question. And what's crazy is that research shows that that's not the case at all. And we can't just plant that idea that doesn't already exist. And what it actually does is that it generally elicits a sense of relief in the person if that has been their experience. They've probably never been asked directly. And the reason I say that is that another important part of the phrasing, and again, if I look at our old generation, the older generation stuff that we've talked about, when you ask it directly, the other reason it needs to be directly is because you do not want to say something like, you're not thinking of doing something stupid, are you? Right? And you've probably heard that term in your young life somewhere. Someone go, oh, you're not thinking of doing something stupid, are you?
Oh, yeah.
It's a leading question. What kind of answer do you think you're going to get if you say to someone like, you're not thinking of doing something silly, right? They're going to go, oh, no, of course not, even if maybe they are. And it's so crazy, just the importance of the semantics when it comes to that. And we as humans, we want to default to something like that because it's really hard. Like when we do the training and we get them and we do like role plays where you need them to ask you directly as we practice, like, are you thinking about suicide? And everyone, the first couple of times they go to do it, it's such a struggle. And you see a visceral reaction out of them because it's so like unnatural. Whereas using downplaying terminology like you're not thinking of doing something silly, that's what comes natural to us probably across the world. But I think Aussies by nature, where we make everything a bit jokey and, you know, shorter, it's so important that you're like, hey, this language has so much power, and just flipping it from you're not thinking of doing something silly to, mate, are we talking about suicide, can maybe even potentially be the difference between, you know, life or death, which is an insane thing to think about.
Well, there's an interesting phenomenon that happens, and you might know about this as well, Justin, speaking about semantics. when it comes to talking to people going through these enormous moments in their life, probably some of the most earth-shattering moments in their life, the difference between saying to someone, I hear what you're saying, I see what you're saying, or I feel what you're saying, can be make or break. And we think about those phrases and we say, well, that's nothing. They're throwaway phrases. We say it all the time. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. But someone who was in that moment, if you can get on that level, if you can empathize, if you can say, yeah, I feel what you're saying, I feel what you feel in this very moment. It's such a powerful tool to use. And you don't need to be a qualified mental health practitioner to empathize, to get on that level. You just got to be human. And that's a really powerful thing that you guys are doing. Really, really powerful, because you're going out there and you're being human, regardless of whether you're a stand-up comedian, you're a PhD psychologist, you're mental health practitioner, you're just a guy off the street, whatever it might be. You're connecting with people in the community. And I think both Alex and I are hugely appreciative that there are guys like you out there doing what you're doing. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's why we've been able to probably find success in this a little bit, or cut through a little bit, is that even the people that trained me, and this is no shade on them, but I was trained by a couple of quite older generation women, and that wasn't that they didn't do a great job of it. I took a lot out of the training. In fact, going through their training made me want to do it myself. But the reason I wanted to do it myself is because I was like, I think that we can add something to this that really connects even further when you're talking about this kind of subject matter, and you've got two pretty well articulated but also rough around the edges blokes delivering the training. And even we've had a few, you get feedback forms at the end of it, and we've had a couple of girls be like, I thought this was going to be the most TikTok podcast bro bullshit I've ever walked into, and yet I've left here just absolutely blown away. And that for me is all the motivation I need to keep going, because if we can have those kinds of connections where it's wow, hearing to I think he's in his early 40s, I'm mid 30s men have this kind of, I guess, passion about the subject and care enough about it to go and do this training and, create this charity and do all of these things. Like you said, it kind of gives you hope holistically that maybe there is a shift in the world, that we're not going to continue the same cycle forever. It might feel sometimes like we're not making a great bit of headway, and the stats, unfortunately, year on year haven't exactly got astronomically better. But when you see this kind of stuff happening at a grassroots level, it still gives you hope that if it's happening, it's going to continue to evolve and happen, and maybe we can eventually get on top of the numbers side of it as well.
I think that's maybe a risk in on itself, though, what you've just said there of saying, well, we're not making headway with what's going on. And I don't want to be that guy that stands on his soapbox and says, well, the world's getting more fucked up as we've gone along. But I mean, you think situationally and environmentally and socially what's happening in the world right now, you might look at it and you say, oh, well, that percentage that we want to go down, we want that percentage number down. We want that lower people, less people dying by suicide, more people accessing mental health and so forth. But the other side of the coin is the world is getting more and more challenging, and we are faced with more and more unprecedented challenges day to day. So if you are battling the tide, if you guys are one of the few pillars that are out there going, well, the fucking tidal waves are coming roaring in, and we are prepared to stand on the shore as a pillar of strength, representing this cohort of people, whether it's Australians, whether it's men, whether it's a combination of both, whatever it might be. That's worth celebrating. I wouldn't downplay the things that you guys do. It's truly phenomenal. And on that note, you guys are a charity. So if people were to donate to you, what exactly would they get out of it? If your everyday Alex walked in and he said, hey, look, this is something that's worth contributing to, where does his money go? What does it achieve?
Yeah, so obviously the training we quite often offer up like free spots. We did a lot more of them last year just due to our personal commitments and other work. We obviously both have full-time jobs outside of doing this, so we'll offer up free seats. Like we just gave 2 away for our last one we ran about 2 weeks ago. I have a men's group that I need to kick back off again. We've had to change venue, but I run a free men's group. It was previously out of the Playford Community Centre near Elizabeth. There's one down south. He runs a free ice baths on the beach every second week. And then we also like provide, like people will contact us and we'll actually give them like money to go and get their first 3 sessions of seeing a psychologist.
Oh, wow.
We will support families. Like we do a lot of postvention work where families will engage us in the unfortunate tragedy that they've lost someone, and then we may, help them with some bills and things like that to be able to support them while going through something so devastating. So it goes into a lot of different buckets, but all the time that we dedicate to it is purely for the love of the game. And we run these events and these men's groups just because we want to see the difference in the community. So obviously outside of just donating, we have a massive like merch store on our website. You can run your own fundraisers. Like I just did Dry July and 9,000 steps a day. So myself, my brother, my wife and his partner all committed to sobriety and 9,000 steps a day. And you can even go on our website and create your own fundraiser, whatever you want to do. There's another bloke, he's a young lad here from SA, a bit of an influencer type, but he's actually going to bike from here to the other end of the Nullarbor or somewhere in Perth, raising money for the charity as well. So that's kind of the next phase where, people can come and just do their own things. And all of that goes directly back into the South Australian community as well, which is, I guess, a hallmark for us compared to some of the other bigger organizations. If you're in South Australia by any chance and you're running a musical event or a community day, we're always happy just to rock up with a table and some information and just have conversations with that part of the community. So please feel free to reach out to us through the website or on the Instagram, and we're just always keen to be involved. We go and attend lots of fun runs and things like that when people run them, just to be a presence. We got to do a heavy metal festival last year where I got to sit there and listen to my kind of music, whilst also representing the Next Step Australia. So if you're running a heavy metal festival, that's my favorite kind of event to do. But yeah, anything and everything.
One final question for you on my end of things, and I know Alex may have something on his end as well, but those seats that you're talking about in terms of sending people out into the world to essentially support the community, and to implement broader change, how much does it cost per seat of that training? When you said that you offer up free seats as a part of the training, what is it per head to be a part of that?
So when we obviously have the ability to pay for seats as well, which is kind of the goal more than anything, so that we are cost neutral as an organisation and not chipping too much. So it's about $350. That's a 2 full day training. Like you need to be off work for 2 full days. So that $350 gives you lunch both days, and you walk away with an internationally recognised certificate as being trained under this program. When we've got the fundraising going well enough, it allows us to be able to give those back to the community for free without trying to fill those seats with paying people, because the idea is that, again, the more people that we can have out there trained under this program, the better, as long as it doesn't sink the charity in the process, of course, right? So it's a fine balancing act, but ultimately through now, part of the reason why we launched this fundraising portal where people can come on and do their own things is because if we can get people out there doing their own sort of grassroots fundraising, then that gives us more funds to be able to then run more training that we can give out for free as well.
Justin, just an amazing amount of information for us and everyone listening, and I think really important for dads. And Scott, your point about talking to people about, how do you feel? And I'm thinking immediately, oh my God, that's how I need to be talking to my kids. And it flows on to so many different parts of our lives. So Justin, thank you so much for coming on and giving us all of that information. How can people find the Next Step? What's the website? What's the Instagram? What's your comedy Instagram? Let's pin everything. What's the podcast you got? Tell us everything.
Well, the podcast is gone in the wake of all of this other stuff. I had to
Okay.
put it on the shelf, unfortunately. But for the charity side of things, the nextstepaustralia.com.au, there's a contact us form through there that reaches out to us via email. That one's probably a little bit slower if you're kind of in need of, more urgent support. And feel free to reach out just because you don't know where to find support in your local area. We can help you put those sort of information together for you. Reach out on the Instagram page. That's probably where you're going to get, which is just the Next Step Australia. I think there's dots in between each word. That's where you'll find us on there. Comedy is just jsaw.comedy on Instagram as well.
Fantastic. I'll put all of that in the description.
We're obviously hugely appreciative of you spending the time to come here and talk to us as a fellow dad, a dad of sons, of which we are both, a promoter of men's mental health, and of course, just a top cunt. Really, like just to like coin a word you've used along the way. We wouldn't want to send you away empty-handed with everything you've done. So, on behalf of the My Friend Had a Baby podcast, we would like to fund for 20 people to participate in the mental health training you described before. It'd be great that we could contribute to the cause in some way, shape, or form. So at $350 a pop, that's a bargain, like really, the amount of people that you could help with that. So we will sort that out a little bit later on. But
Hold on, the puzzled look on my face. Are you talking about the number that I think you're talking about here? 20 times 350?
2 and a 0. That's fine, yeah. So we'll figure out the transfer afterwards. Alex will sell one of his kids. It's fine. But we really appreciate what you guys are doing, and it would be really nice. You've dedicated this time. It's the least we could do.
Mate, that is unbelievable. I'm not very, as you've seen over this last nearly 2 hours, I'm very rarely at a loss for words, and that is just unbelievably generous. That's going to make such a massive difference. And boys, when you're in town, come and sit the training. Come and spend time with me. I would love to have you guys there. And as you've heard, even just little bits of the wisdom, if it adds another feather to your bow, both as community members and as parents, we would love to train you.
Before you go inviting Alex, I wanted to do 50, but he talked me down. So he was just like, it's not that important. No, he did really. No. It's our pleasure to contribute towards such an amazing cause. And we're beyond appreciative that you'd spend the time that you have and to share some of the stories you've shared and of course, for the amazing community work that you do. So it would be remiss of us not to contribute towards that. So thank you, Justin.
Thank you, guys. This has been incredible. Love you guys for doing this podcast because as well, I think, obviously I haven't listened to all the episodes. I apologize. But I think, talking about parenting, there is a lot of stories that we hear lately around unfortunate loss of life. And so many of these stories that we hear are people that are often dads, mums, they have young families at home. And I think having a platform that is just discussing very candidly the challenges of parenthood and people connecting with the ideas of like what those challenges are and realizing that they're not alone, even if this is not just a purely mental health podcast, I think being able to have a joke and laugh about those challenges, you will by default make someone's life better from that perspective by just having two blokes on here talking about those challenges. So, don't just shower myself with praise. I think what you guys are doing here is awesome as well, and keep it up. And let's do this again sometime. There's plenty more shit for us to talk about. I'd love to come back.
Look, it's been amazing, man. Like, it's been great catching up with you. Obviously, I've known you for a long time, so it's been nice to have a bit of a chin wag. And it's been great to introduce. It's been like two worlds of mine colliding, watching you two interact together. So, yeah, definitely worth the price of admission. Justin, unbelievably great to have you here, man. Thank you for everything you've done. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, boys. It's been awesome. Take care.
And for all you tired parents out there, remember, baby in the bouncer, year 11 poetry in the bin.
Baby, chaos join the join.
podcast.